Hi everyone, it's Maddie Brady. We're here to get real about mental health. Stay tuned for some great conversations with some very special guests. Hi everyone, we're here with Chelsea to get real on being sober curious and your journey as a life coach.
Happy to be here.
Of course. So I would love to know, first of all, how you got started as being a life coach and what really led to that, circumstances in your own life that got you to that point.
That got me to being a life coach. Yeah. So I moved to New York and I was in tech sales. And I was a training manager at a pretty Wolf of Wall Street-y, like tech startup environment. And it was very transactional, very intense. And my job was to train a bunch of people out of college how to sell. And at the end of the month, they either hit their sales goal and they didn't. If they did, I moved them on to what we called an experience team. And if they didn't, I fired them. So I felt like I was a life coach a lot of the time, right? Like it was a volatile work environment and people were just learning how to be in a work environment for the first time right out of college. And so I found that I would talk a lot about mindset and gratitude and how your thoughts affect your outcome. At that time, I really had no idea what I was talking about, but I loved doing it. And I got good feedback from it and my teams did really well. So I started thinking maybe I can make something out of this. And I didn't do anything about it for a while. And then the pandemic happened. I was the head of sales at this point at a small food tech startup and business catering, which did not do well in the pandemic. So I lost half my salary. And that's when I was like, cool, it's time to figure this out. And 3 years later, here I am.
That's amazing. That's one good thing that came out of COVID is there was a lot of negativity, obviously, but I think it gave people the time to really self-reflect and think maybe right now is the time to go after your dreams.
Yeah.
So when you got started, did you know what you were going to do with it? Did you just jump in head first? Like, what was the beginning like?
It's so funny. I wish I could go back to that time to really answer that question. I don't think I had any idea what I was doing. I actually think that it was going to be, I thought it was going to be more surface level than it really is. Like, my business is called Thank You Gratitude. I'm a firm believer that gratitude is the number one tool we have to transform our lives. And so I wanted to focus on gratitude and manifestation and creating the reality that you wanted. And I love all of that stuff. Yeah. My business is so much deeper than that, though. And that's actually kind of a good segue into how I started to get sober. I found that my clients were coming to me for so many different reasons, right? Everyone had a different story. There was a different past that needed to be healed, a different future that wanted to be created. And the root was always the same. It was always about their relationship with themselves. It always is about your relationship with yourself, your self-worth, how you talk to yourself, how you feel about yourself. Do you believe in yourself? Do you trust yourself? Do you feel like you are capable? And so often we don't feel those things. And then we don't have a foundation to build anything. It's very hard to heal and grow if we don't have that foundation of self-worth. And so that has become the core of my business, creating a new relationship with yourself. And as I started to do that with my clients, it became this like initiation of healing for me. And I started to do that with myself. And it just became so glaringly obvious that alcohol couldn't be a part of the relationship that I wanted to have with myself. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's really interesting. A lot of people come on here and they have stories of the rock bottom, or they decided to become sober curious because of their skin, or many different stories we've had. And I've never heard anything like that really it blossomed out of something that you were already doing. And you just realized to get to that next level and really elevate yourself and your business, that was something that you had to try.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we were kind of talking about this before. I feel like a lot of people's stories in the sober wellness space is I got sober for whatever reason, and then I got to create this amazing thing like this show. Yeah. And for me, it was the opposite. I chose to be sober for myself, but I don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for my business. Wow. So I started the thing first, and then I was like, alcohol doesn't fit into this.
Yeah, I love the whole idea behind it being founded on gratitude, though, because I think that is the most important tool that really helps you love yourself and love the life that you're in right now and getting to the next level. I've talked a lot about getting to the next level while being okay with the now, which is often really, really hard for people because you might not be where you want to be eventually, but that's okay. And I think that in order to get to that next level, you have to really make peace with the now and be thankful for the now, because if not, that negativity is going to seep into other areas of your life.
Yeah, I love that you said make peace with the now. To take gratitude a step further, it's not just being grateful for what you already have, it's also accepting where you're at. I always say that the paradox of change is you need to first accept where you're at, right? You need to first be okay with what's happening, with what your experience is before you're able to change it. And that feels counterintuitive, right? It's like, but I want to change it, so I can't accept it. But it starts with acceptance. It starts with gratitude.
Yeah, I saw a video a while ago. Honestly, it might have been pre-sobriety that really stuck with me. And it was talking about how every bad situation is good and just finding the good in everything and knowing that even if you went through something negative, that is a lesson that's is meant to teach you how to move forward and is going to prevent you in the future. You might come across another situation where you're faced with something similar and now you have the tool set to be able to face it. So just realizing that everything in life that happens to us is for a reason and that it's going to benefit us in some capacity in the long run.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest belief systems I've established in the last few years, and one of the number one belief systems that I help my clients create, is everything that's happening to me is serving my highest potential good. So similar to,
I love that.
Everything happens for a reason, but to really truly believe that whatever it is you're experiencing, you might not know how or why in that moment, or maybe ever, but in some way it is serving your highest potential good.
Do you feel like you had a past where you didn't believe these things, or did you ever struggle with your own self-worth?
Oh, of course. I think I'd be lying to say that I don't now, right? I think that it's part of being human is working. It's like a forever journey, right?
Yeah.
We're always able to improve our relationship with ourselves and our self-worth. And actually, I think that before I got sober, I thought that my relationship with myself was a lot stronger. I thought that I had really established my self-worth and I really loved myself and I was super confident. And then I got sober and that kind of like took a veil off and I see things more clearly and my insecurities have kind of shown up more and I'm seeing that, oh, like there's actually a lot more stuff I get to work through.
Yeah.
And it's been super uncomfortable, but now I get to work through it, right? It's like, it's shadowy stuff, right? So I think that if you asked me a year ago, what is your relationship like to your self-worth? I'd be like, I'm good. I love myself. And I do. That's true.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. I love that too, because I've said even having this show and being a mental health advocate, sometimes I feel the pressure to have it all together. And I absolutely do not. And it's something that I still work on every single day. And some days I breeze through and everything's fine. And other days it hits a lot harder and is more challenging to feel amazing about yourself. And I think that everyone has those days at every point of their life. And it doesn't mean that all the work that you've done and the journey you've been on is for no reason. It's making those days shorter or making them impact you a lot less.
Yeah, absolutely. I have really grappled with, well, if I'm a life coach, I have to have it all together, right? And the more I let go of that and lean into being vulnerable and am honest about my journey and where I'm at and what I'm going through and when I'm struggling, the better my business is.
Yeah.
The better I'm able to show up for my clients and my community, because we all just want to relate to each other.
Exactly.
Right? And when somebody shows up in this facade of I'm perfect and I have it all together, there's just this, we know that's not true, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't relate to that. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't make me feel good about myself. But when we're in this community and we're being vulnerable, when we're getting real, it's like, cool, yeah, I can relate to that. And that is someone I can trust. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've never worked with a life coach before, but I would imagine that that's how with past therapists, anyone I've ever liked has been someone that's real, that doesn't seem like they're just reading from a textbook, that they're actually a real human being that you can connect with. And that's the way you're going to establish trust with people too. If you show up going in, I'm perfect and I'm going to teach you how to be too, it's not going to lead to a trusting relationship, because at the end of the day, nobody's perfect. It doesn't matter if you're a life coach or a therapist or really any field.
Yeah, perfect is boring.
Yeah.
Right. We're all just trying to figure out this life thing together, and that's what makes it fun.
Exactly. And so when you first got into sobriety, I think you mentioned it was more of a challenge at first, and then you just kept rolling with it.
Yeah, so the challenge was not in the not drinking. I was ready for that. I had done a few stints of sobriety, and we can talk about how I kind of like slowly eased into it. But what was really hard for me was everything that came with it. And really the word I could put on that, how I would define that, is just awareness. I think especially since I am a life coach, I'm used to like the way I talk to myself. I have this line of questioning, right? That's what I do for a living. I'm asking people the right questions. So I find that I'm doing that with myself often. And when I stopped drinking, it was just this new level of awareness. Like I said, like these insecurities that were popping up and these shadows that were coming to light. I think maybe I realized that they were there, but it was easier to kind of avoid them. I say that healing is like we have dormant energy in our body, right? All of these wounds and these past experiences, they live dormantly in us. And we can kind of skate by without really realizing it, but it's just this heaviness that's always there. And when we start to heal, we have to pick up that dormant energy. And so it feels really heavy. It feels worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I doing this? I felt better before.
Yeah.
Because you're finally holding it. But when you're finally holding it, then you get to move through it and release it. And that's when you get lighter, right? Like that's when you're able to raise your baseline level of peace, happiness, contentment, whatever word you want to put on it. And I think for me getting sober, it was like an automatic pickup of a lot of dormant energy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So that's what's been hard. And it still is.
Yeah.
I'm not past that point. I'm in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it gets a lot easier, but I don't think that ever goes away, that you are feeling your feelings 24/7.
Yeah.
So there isn't that escapism that, oh, I had a bad day at work, I'm going through a breakup. You don't get to just go and escape those feelings. You have to continuously feel them. But definitely initially, that I always say the first year is the hardest, because that's when everything comes to the surface. So childhood, teenage years, college years, everything that you've tried to push down and just kept moving on, which is great, because I always say keep moving forward, but you do eventually have to face some things inside you in order to grow and heal and really be comfortable with yourself moving forward.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then, so since you've been sober, other than that, do you feel like it's awkward telling people? Like, how do you feel about the initial conversations and telling people that you've decided to become sober?
Yeah. I am so grateful to have an amazing support system. My friends and my community on my Instagram for my business and my family, everyone has been really supportive. Telling people in general, though, has been supportive for me. I do think that sometimes there is this narrative of you don't need to explain yourself, like do your thing, like stand true to yourself, be in your power, like that's powerful. And it's not that I don't agree with that. I think that there's a beautiful message in that. And I think for me, I've found that I like to explain myself, not
Yeah.
for the other person, but for me.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning, it's like when I go to dinner with a friend who typically that dinner means we're splitting a bottle of wine. Walking to that dinner, I would just be thinking like, oh, I hope they're not bummed that I can't split that bottle of wine, or I wonder if they're going to care. Maybe they would have wanted to go to dinner with someone else.
Yeah.
Important to note, that's a reflection on me, not them, right?
Yes.
Like, that is my own thing. But still, I'm experiencing that. That doesn't feel good in my nervous system. I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous, or whatever emotion you want to put on it. Or I could just shoot them a text.
Yeah.
Can't wait for dinner tonight, just so you know I'm not drinking. Doesn't have to be a big thing. But that was really supportive for me in the beginning. And I still do that with dating. I'm on Hinge, and so often the way someone asks you on a date is, hey, do you want to go for a drink?
Yeah.
I've had so many people say, just show up for the drink and just get a mocktail. Like, that's so powerful. Do that. And like, sure, yeah, that's all well and good, but that doesn't feel good for me.
Yeah.
I want to explain myself to protect my own peace, to protect my own comfort. So my response to that is like, happy to meet for your drink, just so you know I don't drink, but love a bar and a good mocktail.
Yeah.
So that has really served me. I've found power in telling people, in explaining myself.
Yeah. I honestly agree with you on that, because I think it's different for everyone. And if someone doesn't want to explain themselves, they're certainly not entitled to do so. However, when I was first getting sober, I was only 21. So I was super self-conscious about it. And I would just say like, oh, I have to drive tonight, or different things that were these excuses, and I wasn't being honest. And I know those are little white lies, that it really doesn't matter, but it doesn't exude confidence that this is a choice I'm making that's healthy for myself, and I'm proud and confident that I am choosing something in my life to better myself. And that's how I answer today. I have no shame telling people that I'm not even sober curious. I, in fact, had a drinking problem, and I have fixed that and found, not fix, I'm in recovery, but found a solution for it, because that for me gives me power to be open and honest, because then all the cards are on the table. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not ashamed of anything. Like, this is who I am. And if you feel uncomfortable with that, that's totally okay. You don't have to be in my life, but that this is who I am, rather than saying all these little white lies where, oh, I have to drive home, or I have to be up early in the morning, or all these, because I've seen those too, like these suggested things to say. And I think we should normalize that some people don't drink because A, they've had a drinking problem, B, it's not serving them anymore. They want clear skin. They want to go to yoga in the morning. Like, there's so many different reasons why people aren't drinking, and that we should just normalize that it's fine not to drink. And there shouldn't have to be these excuses. I think that's so old-fashioned to think that we need to tell people that we're driving a car in order to excuse the fact that we're not drinking. There should be no excuse needed to not drink, because it's the same thing. Like, if you apply it to anything else in life, like if somebody just didn't want the same pasta you're having that night, there wouldn't be this whole line of interrogations. Like, why don't you want the spaghetti though? Like, and I've seen so many comedians do bits on that, but it really is true. It's the only thing that requires this interrogation or line of questioning, or someone just thinking about like, oh, like, well, why aren't they drinking, you know? But even with the dating, so in the past, when I've been on Bumble, I've had people say, yeah, let's go get a drink. That is like the go-to thing. And I struggled with that too, where I'm thinking, do I tell them right away? Do I tell them when I show up? Because I don't want to make a big deal about it, because although I put on my platform often everything sobriety related, because I want it to be out there for people, it's not 100% of my life. I'm so much more than this small part of me. But at the same time, you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to get there and feel uncomfortable, but also then have them thinking like, oh, well, I like to go out and drink, and I want my girlfriend to drink, or my wife to drink, and I want to go to vineyards. Like, there's so many, and that's okay too. And I think we need to normalize that people have preferences, and preferences are okay.
Absolutely.
But like, we don't want to waste our time.
Yeah, totally.
At the same time.
Yeah, and going back to what you're saying about giving an excuse for speaking your truth, I don't drink. That kind of circles back to what I was saying in the beginning of all healing and growth really does stem from this foundation of your relationship with yourself and your self-worth and who you are. And being able to step into this version of you who's like, yeah, I don't drink. That's self-acceptance. That's being proud of yourself. That is building your relationship with your self-worth, to be excited and proud to be able to say that versus saying something like, oh, I got to drive home.
Yeah.
That excuse also doesn't work in New York City.
Yeah.
So.
Like, are you a millionaire? You have a car here? Yeah, that definitely wouldn't work here. But yeah, so aside from dating, does your family support it? Like, what is it like everywhere else?
Yeah, my family is super supportive. My mom has actually been sober for a bit over a decade.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And my sister actually is in this journey a little bit with me. Not sure what her goals are, and don't need to share them for her in this moment. But it's been cool to like kind of do this together. She's stepping into a version of being sober curious, and so of course she's super supportive of me, and really all my friends have been. I'm grateful to not only have the support system that I do, but also it's becoming more of a thing, right? Like, dare I say it, being sober is trendy.
Yeah.
And you didn't experience that 4 years ago,
No.
I'm sure, when you got sober. And especially to be 21 when it's trendy as hell to be drinking.
Yeah.
I'm 31, right? So like my experience has been so different. And in 2023, when non-alcoholic options are thriving and there's sober events, and it's still, of course, I mean, especially in New York City, like we live in a drinking city, social activities revolve around drinking. And I'm still in such a time where it's never been this easy. So I'm super grateful for that. And also very grateful for my support system.
That is so incredible that you really have such a great support system and friends and family, because that really makes all the difference. And
It does,
not everybody gets to experience that. But it definitely was very different only 4.5 years ago, where they just didn't have the options they do today. So I'm really grateful that they have so much inclusion at restaurants and work settings. And really, it makes the world of a difference when you just have an option. Like, I don't need a mocktail every single time I go out, but knowing that that is an option that you can have at a wedding, or now it's just becoming so much more prevalent at really every event I'm seeing it, because now they have the non-alcoholic beers, they have the mocktails, so there's something for everyone. And I think it's so amazing, because
It really is.
It's inclusive, because with going back to food too, there's vegan restaurants and gluten-free and all different options. And before, it didn't make sense that it was like, okay, you don't drink, here's a soda.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite either mocktail or a spot in New York City that you like to go to?
I don't really. I'm a big sparkling water in a wine glass girl.
Yeah.
I've found that so much of drinking, for me, I feel like is almost ritualistic, right? Like, go to dinner and get your glass of wine. So go to dinner and ask for sparkling water in a wine glass. You know, I think I have a glassware thing. I don't know. I've tried a few of the brands and I enjoy them, but I've never been a big cocktail person anyway. So like making mocktails doesn't really excite me.
Yeah.
So yeah, boring answer. Don't really have a spot or a favorite.
Yeah.
But it's still fun to try things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the sparkling water you can't go wrong with either. Honestly. Yeah. Most of the time I feel like sometimes you're just not in the mood for that, because when you take out the alcohol, it is like, do I really need that with dinner? But it is nice just to be thought of, and definitely at more of the actual bars, I think it's nice when people are only drinking to have something a little spruced up.
Yeah.
But what do you think? So you spoke on really the negative aspects of the last 7 months. What is the positive? What do you think something that really shocked you about your experience?
The same thing. I think that, like you said, negative, but to me, it's so beautiful, right? Like, it's been so uncomfortable, but I'm like, this is like a fast track to healing. Like, all of these insecurities and these shadows and these belief systems that might have taken me a decade to move through and heal and pattern out of, they're just right here. And I'm looking at them and I'm moving through them, and it's so emotional, but I love emotions. And it's just like, it's incredible. It's uncomfortable as hell. But I think that's also the positive, you know, like that has just been so amazing and exciting.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is such a good mindset, and honestly, such an incredible way to look at it, because it really does fast track your healing and allow you to tackle these issues that you might have had your whole life. I definitely experienced that when I first got sober. It felt like I had, okay, now I'm sober. Now I have to tackle this. Now I have to tackle the next rung on the ladder. And without getting sober, I don't think I would have ever gotten to that, because you can just use it as an avoidance tactic where you never have to look inwards that deeply, at least.
Yeah. And mind you, I wasn't even drinking a lot, right? Like, I had, I think, a normal amount of drinking for a single late 20s, early 30s female in New York City.
Yeah.
And still, I had like this veil of being able to not deal with these belief systems and these insecurities and these shadows, et cetera, et cetera. So like, there is such a big difference in the level of awareness when you just completely strip yourself of having that tactic to numb and avoid.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me, because I had a very different experience, but that even drinking a normal amount still really creates that veil is really shocking.
Absolutely. And I think important to note, you know. And just to give you some more positives, right? Some more answers to that question. Like, it has been such a beautiful almost 8 months. And some of my reasoning behind wanting to stop drinking was to connect more with my intuition, to feel more connected to spirit, to be more excited and creative. And I love what I do. And I would find after like one glass of wine the next day, I was just like a little bit less excited about my job.
Yeah.
You know, just like, maybe I'll put that off for tomorrow. Like, maybe I'll sleep in a little bit. Like, not hungover. Just like, just a little meh.
Yeah.
And I've wiped away that meh. You know, I don't want to live a life
amazing.
that just feels blah. And so I really am able to feel more connected and alive. And mind you, alive is a whole spectrum of emotions. That doesn't mean I'm happy all the time. That doesn't mean it's all rainbows and butterflies. I feel all of the feelings, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I'm a big feeler of feelings, but yeah, I want that. I want to experience the lows and be in those so I can relish in the highs.
Absolutely. That is another amazing mindset, because I feel like if you don't experience those lows, if you don't experience the pain, then the happiness just isn't as intense. You're not going to be as grateful for it. You're not going to really have that extra layer of gratitude, going back to that, for your happiness. If you were just happy all the time, then it takes the entire meaning out of happiness, if that's your base level.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that if you aren't willing to experience, to really be in the lows, you don't get to experience the highs on as deep of a level as you could. And not even just lows, like boredom is a great example. We, especially in 2023, are so quick to avoid boredom, right? Pick up the phone and scroll.
Yes.
So learning how to sit in those emotions, like not even just the super low ones, but just kind of like the baseline ones. When you learn how to be in those emotions, you're able to really be in the better emotions too, right? Just experiencing your emotions is such an important thing. I mean, we do a whole nother episode on that.
Yeah.
But, and yeah, like getting sober has helped me experience and be with my emotions on such a deeper level.
That's huge, because I definitely avoid boredom at all costs.
I mean, yeah, because you're human.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly,
thing to think
sometimes I feel like I would rather be feeling anything than boredom. So that's a really good one. And then, so with your business, I saw that you do a lot of dancing and movement. How does that really help you?
Yeah. Movement is so healing. I mean, going back to that idea of like dormant energy getting trapped in our body, that's literally what it is. It's energy that is trapped in our body asking to be moved. So how do we move that? We move our bodies. And that could look, there's so many different ways that can look. But for me, I mean, I exercise and I dance. So part of my routine every day, I mean, we ebb and flow with our routines. So I'd be lying if I said I did it every day. But I incorporate dancing. I just put on a song and I dance. And I do it intentionally, right? Like, I always joke, what's that phrase? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, thinking you could get new results. And I joke that you actually can do the same thing over and over again and get new results. What you have to do is put a new intention on it, right? So if you just do the thing intentionally with a specific intention to create X result, that is going to help you create X result, right? So walk to the subway with the intention of moving emotion through your body, right? You got to walk to the subway anyways. So just do it with the intention of, oh, I get to move my body. I'm going to move emotion through my body as I walk to the subway. So I dance with intention.
I love that. What else do you really do activity-wise that you think helps yourself, just your mind day to day and also in your sobriety?
I am a big lover of The Class by Taryn Toomey. Are you familiar with it?
No, not at all.
It's there's a studio in Tribeca, and then there's one in LA, and then there's a digital platform as well. But it is for me, it's so cathartic. It's a very mindful, mat-based exercise where you do like one motion to the beat of a song for an entire song, like burpees for a whole song or squats for a whole song. And the teachers are all very mindful, and the practice is kind of like, what do you do when it gets hard? Where does your mind go? And how can you shift that and speak to yourself in a way that it actually serves you? So instead of like, this is really hard, this sucks, like, hey, we got this, I'm proud of you, keep going. And you practice that on the mat, and then you are able to practice that off the mat. And I mean, that whole way of thinking just is so aligned with what I believe and how I coach and how I work on my own self. So that practice has been monumental in my healing journey. And it's, again, more movement. So just like getting the emotions flowing through the body.
Yeah, that sounds amazing because
it really
people
is.
don't realize that the biggest war you're ever going to fight is with your own self. Obviously, you want it to be a great relationship with yourself. Most people wouldn't put up with a friend speaking to them negatively or a family member speaking to them negatively, but then a lot of people, before they start to practice this work and even during it as well, they can creep in is the negative thoughts and the self-talk, and allow yourself to speak to yourself in a way that you would never allow anyone else to. And if you can conquer your own minds, then you're ultimately that's the whole, at least for myself, the whole journey of life is
Absolutely
being able to come to terms with yourself, accept yourself, and actually love yourself and formulate a good relationship with yourself, because at the end of the day, you're spending your entire life with your self-talk and with your mind. So why not? People, I think, sometimes avoid the self-work because it might take up too much time, or they're working a lot and don't have time to go to therapy, don't have time for a life coach, or putting in any form of self-work. But at the end of the day, how much time is worth the rest of your life?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it is that foundation we were talking about in the beginning, right? Like the relationship that you have with yourself, your self-worth, your ability to speak to yourself compassionately and believe in yourself. Like, if we don't have that, how can we expect to heal? How can we expect to grow? If we're constantly meeting ourselves with shame and judgment and anger and frustration, how can we motivate ourselves to do the work? How can we believe in ourselves to hit whatever goal? How can we feel worthy of attracting like a positive relationship. But what's crazy is that's all of our baselines, right? Meeting ourselves with judgment and shame and anger and frustration, etc. So learning how to shift that and meet yourself with compassion. That doesn't mean you don't experience all of those emotions, right? You just don't pile pain on top of pain, which is something we're all so good at, right? Like we feel sad and then we're mad at ourselves for feeling sad. And then we get angry at ourselves for being mad. And then we get frustrated at ourselves for being angry. And it's just like pain on top of pain on top of pain on top of pain. It's like, well, let's just be sad. Isn't that easier than being sad and mad and ashamed and angry and judgmental, etc.? Like, let's just meet the sadness with compassion.
Yeah.
And that is really how you reestablish a relationship with yourself to where you feel like you can trust yourself and believe in yourself and feel worthy and heal and attract the things you want to attract. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like you saying that that's the baseline really is the reality. And I know with a lot of my friends that practice self-healing and working on themselves, it seems like so many people come from that negative belief system and then have to work on themselves. Do you feel like, so I know you travel a lot, do you feel like it's as prevalent in other cultures? Do you think it's just across the board? Where do you think that really comes from, that you're coming from a place of negative self-talk and then have to go put the work in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's human. I think it's human. And I'm sure different cultures, different upbringings, and even just different humans, it's all varying degrees. It shows up in varying ways. But I am a firm believer that the number one belief system that all of our pain is rooted in is I am not worthy. And that, like I said, shows up for different people in varying degrees in different ways. But I do think that we have all developed this belief system, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, that I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy.
Wow.
And I think that's a universal thing. And I think that it's just part of being human. In a way, I like to think that it's like, well, we're supposed to establish that belief system so then we can heal it and overcome it and learn how to treat ourselves with love and compassion and let go of the shame and let go of the judgment. Like, that is this human experience. We get to do that, you know?
Yeah. And then, so in your travels, do you feel like you picked anything up from other cultures that helps your practice, or anything neat that you've seen other countries doing right now that hasn't really made its way to the U.S.?
I mean,
as far as self-healing, at least.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how I want to answer this. I mean, I think that our culture is very focused on medication. And I think that medication is a beautiful thing and it's a needed thing in so many ways. And I think that we also need to see medication as a baseline to get ourselves to a place where we can then do the work, right? So, for example, like an antidepressant is there to get you to a baseline so then you feel capable of healing your past and going to a therapist and writing down your gratefuls and meditating or whatever you want your practice to be. Everyone's is different. Yeah. But it's not just medication, right? Like, we have to, again, learn how to speak to ourselves kindly. We have to establish a new relationship with ourselves. We have to look at our belief systems and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that that is more prevalent in other places. And movement, for example, and different somatic healing exercises. I mean, it's all starting to get picked up here, right? Like, we see it, and it's like breath work is a great example. But it is more prevalent in other places, I think. And so that's been, like, beautiful to be a part of and witness.
No, I think it's amazing now, especially with technology, where you're really able to access what other parts of the globe are doing, that we're able to share practices and see, okay, the 3 things I've already tried aren't working for me. Let's see what this other person's doing. And there's just so many different neat ways, I think, to heal yourself, and a different solution for every single person, because not everything, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
Yeah. And then going into the manifestation part of your practice, how exactly do you describe to people how to manifest, and are your beliefs behind that?
To be honest, I don't. I don't describe to people how to manifest. I think going back to what I was saying about manifestation earlier, I feel like I thought that my practice was going to be a lot more surface level. Surface level might not be the right way to describe it, but manifestation is such a buzz term these days, and I think there's a lot of junk out about it. In its most basic form, manifestation is something we're always doing, right? It's not like something you learn how to do and then you have the power to manifest. Manifestation is part of the human experience, right? Like, what's going on in here is how I create my external reality. Like,
Yes.
as within, so without. My thoughts, my feelings, my belief systems create the world that I see. And that's manifesting.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of describing manifesting to my clients, we just work on the internal, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the belief systems? What did you see, hear, and experience in childhood that has created the way of being that you're in now? And how can we shift those things so then we can manifest the reality that you want to create for yourself?
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that so much better, honestly, because it just seems more realistic that the energy you're putting out is what you're going to attract, what you're going to create, rather than just repeating a mantra over and over again and expecting some miracle to happen. I think it's a lot more realistic to work on yourself and know that your life does change when you work on yourself. And I've seen that looking back and again, practicing gratitude and being grateful for where I am today. I've seen different levels unlock from each level of self-work that I do, and I hope to keep climbing that ladder and keep having more and more levels to go. But I really like that because I always go back and forth between everything happens for a reason, everything that's meant to happen is going to happen, but then at the same time I'm going to create my own reality, and having the two fit together.
Yeah.
And just making that make sense.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be hard to do that, right? It can be hard for those things to fit together. The way I like to look at it, everything that's happening to me is serving my highest potential good, right? I said that earlier. And I still have choice, right? Like my internal world still creates my external world. So I can create the external world I want to create. So if things happen that feel uncomfortable or that feel tragic or that feel frustrating, or whatever word that you want to put on it, that is still serving my highest good. Maybe it's serving my highest good to like get me back on track. Maybe I have been making decisions that have been like taking me off my path. So then something life altering kind of has to come in to like shift you back in. It doesn't always have to be that dramatic, right? But like, I am still making these choices. I am still creating my reality. And sometimes things are going to happen. Things do happen that are serving my highest potential good to help me keep making those decisions to create the reality that I want to create.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, those two things can definitely be tricky to fit in together. But I think that they absolutely do if you let them. Like both of those belief systems. Everything that's happening is serving my highest potential good. And I have the power to create my reality. Both of those are and can be true.
That's great. I love that. And then, so for your practice, do you work one-on-one with people? Do you do classes? How exactly are you working right now?
Yeah, I mostly do one-on-one. I've run some groups as well. An exciting time, though. I'm actually launching a membership next month.
Wow.
So I have a small group of founding members in it right now to just kind of like pilot the first month, and it's going to be opening next month. So that is a much easier way to just like hop in and get a taste of what it is like to work with me. We're going to do monthly group coaching calls. There's going to be a theme of the month every month where I'll drip a bunch of content like a masterclass, journal prompts, guided meditations, etc.
Wow.
And then there's a community where everyone is going to be connecting, which I think is so powerful. I mean, there's something really cool about getting a group of like-minded people together with a shared mission of healing.
Yeah.
I find that you realize we are all so unique and we're we're exactly the same.
Yes.
There's something so healing in just that, right? There's something so comforting in that.
Yeah.
So this has been something I've been dreaming up for a while, and I'm really excited to bring it to the world.
That is so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And it's all online as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm definitely going to join one of the group
Please
classes. And then as far as journaling, is that something you've been doing for a while?
Yes.
What's your journey with that?
Putting pen to paper is, I think, one of the most powerful things you could do. It is the best form of free therapy because we have all the answers, right? My job as a life coach is not to give you your answers. It's to help you find the answers you already have, right?
Yeah.
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm asking you the questions so you can find the answers that you've always had within. And when you're willing to sit with a journal, like really sit with it, you're going to find those answers. So it doesn't really answer your question, but my journey with journaling has been discovering that, right? It's just the willingness to sit down with pen and paper, and I love creating tailored journal prompts for my clients, so I do it for myself too, with whatever I'm moving through or going through. In fact, that's how my sober journey started. I was living in Morocco. I was living in Costa Rica before Morocco, and I really didn't like how much I drank in Costa Rica. It didn't feel good. And so I was living in Morocco, and I was like, it's time to start looking at this relationship. This was over 2 years ago. And I wrote up 8 questions that pertain to me and my relationship with alcohol. And I spent 2 months just diving into those questions and finding so much answers and so much truth that I didn't want to be true. And that was really the start of my process. So journaling has really just opened so many doors for me. And I know that that's not unique to me. Like if you let it, it opens doors. So do you journal?
No, I've just been thinking over, so I have written, like I used to really like doing poetry about points of my life.
Cool.
But I've never really journaled, and that's what I was just thinking. I think
we'll
it might
have
be
to talk about that offline. Yeah, I'll write you up some prompts. It's powerful.
Yeah. I remember doing it in school when I was younger and loving it. But then I think sometimes if you're not aware of the fact that you should be doing it, it just slips away, and it's something that really should be a part of your life. Did you always do that? Is it something fairly recent?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always liked writing as a kid. Gosh, to be honest, I don't even really remember keeping diaries. I'm sure I did, but I don't have a vivid memory of that. I think I started really journaling when I moved to New York.
Okay.
Which was 9.5 years ago, but not all the time, right? Much fewer and far between thing. Yeah. And then there's so much, it's so funny. It's like I started this business to help others, but really it's just totally selfish. It's just I get to help myself all the time. So I think probably my business really helped push me like in so many ways, because I realized how healing journaling could be, and I'm telling my clients to do it, and who am I to tell my clients to do something that I'm not doing? I think that's probably when it became a serious habit for me. But now, I mean, in the last few years, it's something that I do all the time. Yeah. Almost daily.
Wow. I'm going to try to implement that. So I'll give an update. I see a lot of your posts about your move to New York and then moving over to Brooklyn, and I absolutely love everything you say about New York, because I think it's so relatable, and I feel exactly the same way. Can you talk about your journey getting to New York and how you think that impacted your mental health journey and really just your journey in general?
Yeah, so I moved to New York right when I graduated college. It was New York or bust for me. I can't really tell you why. I didn't have like a job here or anything. I just had to be here. The energy, the pace. Yeah. This was where all the opportunity was. And how that affected my mental health journey. I mean, New York is just such an intense place. And then, like I said, I started working in tech sales, and that felt intense. And it was also a big drinking culture. And so I don't think I was really taking care of my mental health. I think I probably thought I was because I was big into gratitude and I like to talk about the power of your thoughts. I read The Secret. That's like, that was my mental health journey at the time. I read The Secret and I'm like, cool, like my thoughts can create my outcomes. That's awesome. And I believed in it and I saw the power and the truth in it when I really practiced it. So that's where it started. And like I said, I didn't do much about it until the pandemic happened and I started my business. And that's really when my mental health journey began. So I'm trying to think like how New York fits into that. I just think that New York has pushed me to do a lot, to be the person that I've become, right?
Yeah.
Like New York can be a hard place to live and it makes you want to become this person. You know, when I moved here, I was so young and so excited and had so many dreams, some of which are totally not my dreams anymore.
Yeah.
But it's really been a place that has, it's like it has its own personality, right? And so it's a motivating environment and a hard one.
Yeah. That's how I feel, honestly, in the past. So I just moved here a year ago, and I feel like everything is in your face, and you really start to have to self-reflect and think, okay, that dream I had when I was 8, when I was 12, is that still my dream today? Because everything's at your fingertips, and there's so many different ways you can go and different paths you can take, that's when, at least for me, I really started to get to know myself and realize, like, what do I actually want to do?
Totally.
And what is just a dream I'm holding on to from when I was younger that no longer serves myself or my thought process.
Yeah. And to talk about getting real, New York recently, I've been starting to feel out of alignment with it, which is a really uncomfortable thing for me to say. I think that New Yorker has become like part of my identity, right? And any shedding of an identity is going to be very hard for us, right?
Yes.
Because we latch on to these roles that we play, right? Whether it's like a career or a relationship or a city, or being a drinker or being sober. You know, there's all of these like labels or roles that we attach our identity to. And anytime we're shedding that, our subconscious, it's like this like ego death.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I kind of struggled to answer that question, because I'm like, what is my relationship to New York right now? It's an uncomfortable one. And it's hard for me to put words into because I haven't quite figured it out myself yet.
Wow.
But it's something that I'm like, is this the season for me to like take a break from New York? Not to say I haven't taken a break from it before. Like you said, I've done a lot of traveling, but I don't know. New York is maybe something that is time for me to shed. TBD.
Wow. No, I love your honesty in that answer, and also couldn't relate more with the shedding the identity. I feel like I've had so many different seasons of my life, and it's really hard to let go of a big part of our identity, especially when sometimes I feel like I've put myself into a box, like this is who I am, and constantly putting it out to the world. And then when it's time to move away from that, it feels like a part of you is dying.
Totally.
And I think you truly have to let it die, because you're never going to become who you're supposed to be if you're hanging on to that. I talked about in my last episode, I've always struggled with letting go, and it's
very human of you.
Yeah. The hardest letting go is letting go parts of yourself.
Totally.
And knowing that it no longer serves you and you just have to move on.
Yeah.
And then all of the fear goes into, so what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
Who am I going to be next? And sometimes we honestly don't know and have to jump in before we're aware.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, there's so much beauty in that, but it's terrifying. I mean,
Yeah.
The ego quite literally thinks that change is death. Right. So that's why when we go through some big change, there's so much internal discomfort, because there's that subconscious part of you that's like, danger, 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 even if it's an exciting change. Yeah.
So do you know any ideas for what you're doing next, or just in that zone where you're figuring it out?
Nowhere else feels like home. So it may be another travel stint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'm thinking about putting my stuff in storage next year and just doing a little bit of travel.
That
But we'll
sounds
see.
amazing.
Maybe this is all an initiation for me to come back into my love for New York.
Yeah.
But right now, to what you said, I'm using it as a practice to surrender, right? Letting go is hard for everyone. It's hard for me too. And I like to figure things out. I like to plan. I like to have answers. So I'm seeing this as a really divine opportunity for me to practice surrender and just know that the universe is going to present me with answers, and to trust that, and to just let it unfold as it's supposed to.
That's great. What would you tell someone that's thinking about becoming sober curious but isn't sure if it's right for them or aligns with their life, or they're just nervous about taking that first step?
Yeah. So that actually makes me just want to share how I started this, like, deciding to fully be sober, because I think people that are thinking about being sober curious can resonate. I started this. I'd done multiple sober stints, but then I decided I wanted to do 100 days. 100 days felt like the amount of time I needed to heal my relationship with alcohol. 20, 30, 40, I don't know, days into my 100 days, I'm like, okay, I need more than 100 days. So I decided to do a year.
Yeah.
And a few months into that year, I'm like, no, I don't want to drink. Like, this is a lifestyle. So this is not a year experiment. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. I would not have been able to. I don't want to say I would not have. But in that moment, in February 12th, when I started my 100-day sober experiment, I wouldn't have been able to say I'm done drinking.
Wow.
That felt way too scary. A year felt too scary. I started with 100 days, then it turned into a year, and now it's forever. So you don't have to make a decision.
Yes.
Right? Like, chunk it down. If you have only been sober for a week before, which is pretty normal, which is crazy, right? Like, I started drinking when I was 14, and I'd drink every single weekend for my entire life. That was just normal, and on weekdays too sometimes. So 30 days, the first time I did 30 days, felt like a really long time.
Yeah.
So start with 7. Take a week off. Then take a month off. You can chunk it down. That's okay.
Yeah.
And to go back to really answer your question, what would I say to someone who's not sure that sobriety is for them, but they're curious? You don't have to be sure if it's for you. You're curious. And that in and of itself shows you that there's something to explore. If you are curious, listen to that.
Yeah.
You don't have to make a decision. Curiosity doesn't mean you never have to drink again. Follow your curiosity.
That's great. Yeah, I think sometimes it can be scary thinking, for the rest of my life, I'm not going to drink, or just having that large scale thought process scares a lot of people away from it. But you're absolutely right. You don't have to make that decision day one. You can just try the first week and then see how you feel. And more oftentimes than not, I think people start to experience the gifts of sobriety and the clarity and maybe that uncomfortableness that's actually going to lead to some self-growth. So that's great advice. And thank you so much for coming on and getting real.
Me.
Of
I love
course.
getting real.
Thanks for tuning in and getting real with us. Podcasts will be posted every other Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Please reach out via DM if you want to chat.